How great would it be to get up close and personal with the beauty industry heroes we love and admire, and to ask them, how did you learn to do what you do? I'm Chris Baran, a hairstylist and educator for 40 plus years, and I'm inviting all our heroes to chat and share the secrets of their success. Today's guest is a teacher, podcaster. She's a brilliant hairdresser, session stylist, editorial stylist. She is the founder of hairdesignertv.com, which has been going for 20 years, and it has over 2,000, catch that, 2,000 online videos. She is also a film documentarian. The documentary she's produced is I'm Not Just a Hairdresser, and also The Legends, which include Vidal Sassoon, Robert Lebeda, and Trevor Sorbie. She's produced Hair Heroes series with Anthony Mascolo, Antoinette Bienders, Sally Brooks, and just many others. She is a, catch this, 7-time NAHA winner and Lifetime Achievement winner. She's also at the AIPP Best Commercial Look. She is Intercoiffure Icon and Legendary Award winner. She is the first female fashion director for Intercoiffure North America. She's been the creative director for Trevor Sorbie, creative director for Vidal Sassoon's, now catch this, at the age of 23. If you want to describe her work, I would just say that it's absolutely stunning. And she's done over 1,000 hair shows worldwide. She's published internationally for the last 30 years. So let's get into this week's head case, Vivienne Mackinder. Oh, Vivienne, let's face it, we haven't had the opportunity to go house to house partying together, but I've known you for the longest time and admired your work, etc. And right now, I feel almost that I should be bowing or something, because you've been like a hair hero to so many people, me included. So I just wanted to say, on behalf of all the people watching, listening, Vivienne Mackinder, welcome to Headcases.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. And thank you for making this even possible so that so many of us can listen to some of the extraordinary guests that you've had. And it's been absolutely delightful. So thank you. Oh,
you're welcome. But what's interesting, Viv, is how you, above probably anybody, has the biggest link. I mean, I talk to them, but you probably have the biggest link to most of the people that I've talked to, like with Trevor and all the people that are on there, Antoinette, all of those people you've had connections with. That, I'm this humble boy that grew up in New Fashion Beauty Shoppy in Humboldt, Saskatchewan, and 7 chairs with green and blue flock wallpaper, and grew from that to where I am today. But you've had this amazing journey along the way, and I just find that absolutely astounding.
I'm very lucky.
So I want to throw this. I want to get into hair, but I want to throw this at there first. That I was pleasantly surprised, but yet not shocked. That was it before hair you were a dancer?
Yes, I was.
Tell me about that.
I was a painfully shy child.
Oh.
And my mother thought the only way to break me out of my shyness was to throw me on a stage.
And did that work?
It did, ironically, because I was so shy, I would hide from everybody. And I had a trauma when I was 4 years old at school. I went to school my first day in my lovely little uniform, and I would not eat the steak and kidney dinner.
Oh, I don't blame you.
And so because I wouldn't eat it, I was taken by the headmistress to her office, and she force-fed me.
Oh.
And it was terrifying. And when I went back home, I wasn't the same little girl that had gone to school that day. It took a few days for my parents to figure out what the heck went on, and eventually it was revealed. So grandmother went up to the school with my mother with a rolling pin.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure.
And from that day forth, I was terrified of anyone who had authority, terrified to put my hand up. I wanted to be invisible, and being a redhead in a very tiny school where I was the only ginger girl there, I already got a sense that life was not going to be easy. I would be ridiculed a lot for having freckles and ginger hair. So mother's decision to put me on the stage, because I was always dancing. I never walked anywhere. I always danced everywhere. So it was very wise of her. And so within the stage, I found my joy.
It's fun because, like, as you and I talked about just before we got on, we're talking about coaching and whatnot. And I find that I'm trying to get it into words that don't have profanity in it, but I'm just so disgusted by people that when you're in a learning environment and sensitive, that people would do that to somebody and use that kind of power over top of them. And I know that you're in education now and you're amazing at what you do, but did that help you in any way to way you educate now?
I think in many ways it did, because even at Sassoon's, when I would get myself into some trouble, cutting hair way too short, getting into a problem and then being terrified to actually ask for help, because I was so scared that they'd look at me and think, oh God, this girl's so dreadful, let's kick her out right now, she shouldn't be here. So I would just dig myself into a larger hole. And I remember so many times the teachers would come by and say, you've overchecked that. Oh, you should check the other side more, and then just walk away. And I would go, what does that mean? I've just butchered this woman's hair and I don't know what my exit strategy is.
Yeah.
And I would go home so many times crying, saying to my mom, I just don't have what it takes. I think I'm useless. And bear in mind, when I was at Sassoon's, I'd already done 2 years at the London College of Fashion in hair. So I had a very strong classic background. But yes, I suppose it did. And I remember one time when I was at college, and my original goal was to go from dance into either film or theatre. I wasn't quite sure. And I realized that my career in dancing, I was performing professionally. It's a tough life being a dancer. And I had licenses to be away from school so I could perform. And I realized, okay, my dancing career at the age of 19 is over. And so I was always fascinated when the sets would change on stage. And I thought, well, maybe I can be a painter. And then I thought, well, Viv, you can't paint. You're not really good at that. And then I thought, well, I'll be a makeup artist. Because I'm always fascinated when the characters would come off of the street. And then you'd see them get into costume and wigs and makeup and so on. And how they would step into character and step into their story. And a moment ago, it was just Fred, right? And now he's this wonderful character. And I was fascinated what costuming and makeup and wigs would do to change your whole presence. And I thought, that's genius. So I thought, well, I'll become a makeup artist. And a friend of mine knew Chrissy Beveridge, who was at that time the head of the BBC hair and makeup department. And so she said, listen, if you're going to go anywhere to get like a career in makeup or hair, go to the London College of Fashion, because the BBC was very keen to pull people from there, because they have an incredible program in the history of hair. We did wig making. We did so many different broad things. And so I thought, okay, jolly good, I'll go to the London College of Fashion and do that. And I always remember towards the end of the program, this lady that had this terribly posh voice, she said, anyone going to the BBC will never succeed with their marriage.
Oh.
And I had just got engaged. And I thought, oh gosh, you go to the BBC and your marriage is collapse, which now I understand the why behind it. And I thought, well, I better not do that, because I like the guy I'm going to get married to.
So, excuse me. Sorry. So you were at the BBC. Now, is that where the love for wig making came from? Because I know that I'm kind of jump a little ahead here. Is that you were where I knew you from? Because I was a Sorbie freak. I didn't know Trevor. I knew of him. I watched his work, and everybody, in Canada, you would always, the magazine, you get Hairdresser Journal, and his work was always on the cover somewhere in there. And I marveled at his work, and that's where I think I first knew of you. You were working there. So how did all the because you've been across the gambit. You've in NAHA, you've won in I think an avant-garde. You've been I think editorial. It's you've been. I mean, if there's an award out there, you've won it. But you above everybody show how diverse that your work is. So was the wig making, did that really start with your avant-garde? Was there a separation in there, a divorce of that, and pulled it back in? How did that work?
No, actually, when I was at Sassoon, just to backtrack, I never actually went to the BBC. I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified. And I went to Vidal Sassoon's in my college holiday. I didn't believe in myself. And when the teachers were all belittling, it went back to that little 4-year-old that's not good enough, right?
Yeah, you're having to eat steak and kidney pie again.
Yeah, and do you know the irony of this?
What?
When I was 40 years old, I read a book on eating according to your blood type. And guess what?
What?
Vivienne's a natural vegetarian. That 4-year-old knew. Isn't that fascinating?
That's wild.
So I didn't go to the BBC because I was terrified. I went to Sassoon's in my college holiday. And while I was there taking a month's program, they came up to me and said, when you graduate, we want you to come and work for us. And I was like, what? That's crazy. So I did. So I went through the whole training. So when I eventually kind of went through all that training nonsense that you'd go through, which was grueling, I was asked to cut a wig for Vidal, which was their page boy that was going on a tour. So that was my first exposure to wigs because they knew I had a background in wig making. But it really took off when I went to work with Trevor. Because Trevor would, one of the fun things about Trevor's creativity was his ability to see through a shape and see something more. And so we'd go into the wig store and I'd be looking around and say, Viv, this is just genius. And he'd be looking around going, that's the one. And I'd say, well, what are you going to do with that? He said, it's not going to look anything like that. We're going to do this, that, and the other. And so I got to see the magic. And Sassoon's did it too, because they couldn't put those haircuts on the model. The fashion shows were wigs, and there were so many places where wigs were being worn, but when they're worn so well, you don't know it's a wig.
Bingo.
And so that's the genius of it. And so Trevor was always saying, you just got to make it look as though it's growing out of their head. And also in those humble days, even if we did avant-garde, it wasn't these trees and huge monuments on their head. It was small subtleties. It was small shapes. And he would always say, can you be clever with something small?
Yeah.
Big is big, just by the scale of it. Does it make it brilliant? Not necessarily. And I actually think some of the most genius avant-garde styles are the tiniest ones. They're the cleverness. So that's where I kind of I didn't fall in love with wigs, but I enjoyed the fact that it would allow me to work with a gorgeous model without them freaking out because I could plop that wig on. And when people say, she just used a wig, you have no idea. It's 10 times harder to work with a wig and all the challenges that you go through to make it look real.
Yeah, that's part of the, and I'm just going to, this is just an opinion. It's just mine. Doesn't have to be anybody else's. But that's where I have an issue with some of the thought process going on nowadays that is saying if you're just putting a wig on, then it doesn't mean you can cut hair. When I agree with you that if you can cut a wig or make a wig and cut it because you don't want to have that model freaking out and you need the face, it's all. I don't say it takes more because it's belittling the other side, but it takes a skill set that is learned, that shows your talent. So anybody that can, when you can look at it and you go, is that a wig? And you can't tell, to me, that person's genius and that person's skilled.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a link that I'm missing though in here is like, did you go to Sassoon's just out of school and you went there just on a weekend? Were you in hair first? You went to college and then had a job outside and then went to Sassoon's? How did that go?
When I graduated from school, I went to the London College of Fashion to apply for the 2-year program. And another very dear friend said to me, Vivi, darling, always work for the best of the best. Mm-hmm. That's all she said. Yeah. And I went to the college and I failed my interview. and they said that I didn't have hands to be a hairdresser. And I came away thinking, I don't know what hairdressers' hands look like, but obviously these aren't the hands that do it. And so they also said that I needed to get more qualifications. So I went back and I went to get more qualifications, academic qualifications. And so during that time, I also decided that I should learn how to be a secretary. So I went to secretarial school, and it was a nightmare. And I had my first job working for Warner Brothers, and I just had this little vision of being this little girl in her nice little suit, sitting there with her legs crossed, doing shorthand, and just looking so fabulous in my little outfit, like something out of the 50s almost. And this guy, dictating this letter that's going to some major celebrity, because they always used to come in. So I used to do the shorthand. I go, okay, sir, thank you. Be back in a moment for you to sign the paper. And I go outside and I think, what the bloody hell have I just written? I couldn't understand it. And then I would type kind of based on memory. I was just, this is horrible. And then celebrities would come in and I'd be like, I don't know what to do. And I said to my mum, I don't think I'm meant to be a secretary. And the funny thing was, when we were typing, it had carbon paper.
Yep.
It was a proper typewriter where you push the carriage along and you carry on typing. And when we had to pick up our speed, it was to the William Tell overture.
Oh, Lord.
So today, and I was like, oh my gosh. And then every mistake you make is there. You can't correct it. And so I failed typing. My shorthand was atrocious. And I said, this is not going to work. So anyway, and then the next year I went back to the London College of Fashion again. I thought, you know what? You may have rejected me the first time, but I'm going to go for it again. Yeah. I don't know. So there was a little bit of fire in me. And I think, being a ballerina, you learn relentless determination. You learn how to dance through pain. You learn that the show must go on. And you learn criticism very quickly because you're never, ever, 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 ever good enough. I won the All England Championship and I still wasn't good enough. So, that was the background. So when I was told, you don't have what it takes, I thought, well, you're telling me to go and get more qualifications. I'll do that. Yep. And I'll be back. So the next time I went there and I got accepted. And in the college holidays, I went to Sassoons. So I had 2 solid years of training when I actually joined Sassoons, and I went through my apprenticeship program. So it was a 3-year program. And I think the following 2 years was just trying to find myself, because I wasn't a confident person. And then they found out that I had a dance background, and I just presumed I just came from that theatrical world. So when they said to me, we're going to do a stage show, I thought, well, that's really odd. Like, there's no dancing, and what would you do standing on the stage doing hair? Who would watch that, right? So my first hair show was at Wembley. It was a massive show. They had huge screens, and there I am. I'm only 2 years with Sassoons, and I'm now on a stage for them. And I thought, well, I would just do a little choreography for them. I could do a little bit of makeup, but I wouldn't be going on a stage for them. So in the beginning, I did some choreography and I did some makeup, and then they said, no, this girl's got to go on the stage. And I went on the stage, and I thought, today's the day I die, because I'd never opened my mouth on stage. I'd always danced. So the moment they brought the microphone to me, I thought, this is it. And I remember looking at the screen, and my hand was shaking so much. On the screen, you could see it jiggling up and down. And I thought, I can't cut the hair because my hand won't stay still. And then the back of the stage dropped during the presentation, and down in the bottom of the stage were the models, and we did Erte. So we had the beautiful figures of Erte, the beautiful letters, and the models were draped around the Erte, and then we would leave the stage and the Erte characters would come up and perform. I was so terrified, and the stage darkened. It took ballet skill not to fall into the pit and come up with them, straddling a letter.
I have to say one thing. I'm so glad you failed typing, because I can't imagine. Think about we would have lost if you would have been successful at that. So, but I think anybody that's out there that's watching and listening to this can there's that. I'm just going to speak for myself. I'm sensing a kinship that, because I was miserably shy when I was a kid as well, and I never went to dance. You don't want to see me dance, but the reality is getting on stage is what set me free. But I sucked at it at the beginning. I don't think I've ever been so. I've rappelled off the side of a mountain. And I was not as afraid as I was the first time I was on stage. I just literally hid behind the model, didn't know what to say. I was cutting for God's sake, Viv, I was cutting a trim just because I knew that I could make that person happy, and it was a miserable show. And why I was working for L'Oreal at the time. Why they ever hired me back, I'll never know. But I understand. Do you still to this day, like I'm not sure if the imposter syndrome is right. Did you ever get over that little girl, that shy little girl, where when you step on stage that you still wonder a little bit?
I think when you care about anything in life, there should be a little a tingle of adrenaline. And the question of, can you outperform what you just did? For myself, the biggest shift took place because I would always feel nervous, and then it would just be like, put my hands in the hair, and that's safe territory, and you're good to go. I did a lot of training to understand how to be effective. And being with Trevor for all of those years, traveling the world with him, and also with Sassoons traveling the world, doing all those events, I started to learn, and Trevor would get quite nervous. And I'd always say to Trevor, just before going on stage, I'd say, come on, Trevor, let's go out there and have fun. And I started to think about that. But I think the most profound shift was when I said to myself one day, it's not about me.
Yep.
It's about the audience. And if I can just focus on serving and giving and making sure that I'm adding value to them, number one, it takes a huge mantle off of yourself. And you put your priorities in the right place, because it's hopefully I can do or say or show something. And Trevor used to say this too, let's give them a reason to want to go back to work tomorrow. Yeah. And I think when you put it in that perspective, whether it's a new guest that's sitting in your chair, because I even have to this day a little, I wouldn't call it anxiety, a little bit of like I'm on my tippy toes with the new guest experience, because I want to make sure I don't assume and I don't judge, that I really take in who they are, and I meet them where they live, and I design from that perspective. And sometimes, when we're looking at the world through our own filters, it can be distorted, and we can do what we think is nice because we like it personally, not necessarily what is right for her. Yeah. So I think it's kind of growing up. And also, I used to say to myself, Trevor wouldn't have me on the stage right now, neither would Sassoons, if they didn't believe in me. And I work with the giant Christopher Brooker. So I'm very, very fortunate. I stood by the side of Christopher Brooker and Annie Humphreys. And for those of you who are saying, who are these people? Just Google, because they pioneered coloring techniques for Annie, pioneered haircuts that were extraordinary. And, think today, how difficult is it to come up with a completely new, fresh, original idea? And I got to witness them, and I got to travel around the world with them. I used to share a bedroom with Annie, and she would wait up for me at night. She'd keep the light on until I came. I mean, how lucky am I? So I went from that, and luck is not really the right word. Our life's a summation of the decisions that we make. Yeah. And, I have never been the most confident person, but from that lack of confidence, it's just been a sort of a drive to say, come on, Viv, do it a bit better. Yeah. Do it a bit better, raise your standards. How can you make that stronger and better, and so on and so forth? So that drive keeps your head in the right space, because you don't want limiting thoughts to limit what you can do. And if you're in a place where you're giving and serving, whether it's one guest on a photo shoot with a crew and the talent, or whether it's a fashion show, or whether it's a hair show, or whatever the audience is, the client is, you've got to go out there with this sort of mindset of, I've got to empower, I've got to give, I've got to empower, I've got to help these people move from where they are. And if I can move them just 1% and inspire them, then I've added value to somebody else's life.
Yeah, no, I'm with you 100% on that one. And I think it takes real maturity and growing up to figure that one out. Because I know, and I think even when I started, it had to be about, and I wasn't consciously thinking me, it was the me thinking about me looking silly, which made me try to overperform. And once you figure that out, that you just have to be yourself and give. And once you do that, then that's where the connection happens with the audience. And I think that's brilliant. I want to go back, though, because you said something that if people didn't pick up on it right now, I want to hit it again. Because I never worked with Annie. I never worked with Christopher. He or she wouldn't know me to see me, but they were idols of mine. And I remember going to many shows. And the thing that scares me, Viv, is losing our past and losing our history. And that's part of the reason why I want to do this is there's so many people that inspired and motivated and paved ground for all of us that are out there right now. We have to, we've got to make sure that we pay homage to them and people know where this stuff comes from. Because, how many times have we seen somebody that does a haircut, and I hate this word when people say it, but I invented this XYZ shape. And you'll go, well, you didn't invent that. I know where that came from, And I think that it's the more that we can bring our peers, our icons, the legends that we have in a business that gave us what we have now, the more that people will honor those people. And I think that's it's a shame when people don't know, not only from your own country, but from other countries, that they don't know them.
Well, I think it's important to know the history of your craft. One of the great things about going to the London College of Fashion, our textbook was called The First 5,000 Years of Hairdressing. Wow. And we started with the Egyptians and we worked through the entire book. And it's fascinating because you understand where fashion comes from and you start to understand cycles. And I think, it's lovely to look at various decades. And when you work with fashion designers, they may say, well, it's going to have a little bit of a cyber 70s sensibility, but it has a little bit of Georgian as a period of time. And you go, okay. So you research Georgian and you research, 70s. And all of a sudden you go, wow, by colliding these two concepts together, I've got something new. So also understanding social importance. And today, it's a harsh reality. Everything is so relaxed and so dressed down, which is lovely. And I think it's wonderful that we can do that, be casual. But we shouldn't get so lazy. And we as professionals, I think it's really important to be an inspiration to every guest by dressing up. I just recently went to a restaurant and I got dressed up with my husband and the waitress came up to us. She said, is this a special evening? Is it your birthday? I went, no. Anniversary? No. She said, oh. I said, we're dressed up because we want to be dressed up and enjoy the evening. And it was like, why not dress up and feel fabulous? Have we forgotten what it feels like to be girly and dress up and put on some high heels? And when everyone dresses down and throws their hair into some ponytail or whatever, it doesn't give their yearning to go to the hairdresser and stay well groomed and polished. And I like deconstruction. I like the undone. I get it. It's been around for 25 years. It's not new. And we have to be mindful of the difference between relaxed, undone, and casual, and sloppy, and I don't care, and I just roll bed. We used to dress up to get on an aeroplane. We used to dress up to go to London. Oh, we're going into the city. We'll get dressed up. Today you see people, it's like, did you just roll out of bed and come onto this plane? Yep. It's like, and it's okay. But when it becomes a mass, you walk around and you go, where's the beautiful hair? And the best place to watch that is in an airport. Where is the gorgeous hair? Yeah. You try and find gorgeous hair. And then you say to yourself, hairdressers have done that. Yeah. Or they did it at home in their bathroom. So I say we need to give ourselves a little bit of a slap and say, We need to be role models. We need to be inspirational. I'm not going to be the dentist with broken teeth recommending that you wear a bridge, right? I'm going to be that hairdresser that looks amazing and I get dressed up. When I used to go into London to Sassoon's, I would lay out my outfit the night before and I would look and I would see what the hat's going to be and so on and so forth. And when I used to go to the academy as the art director there, I would walk in and there would be people that would be returning and say, oh, couldn't wait to see what you were wearing. I gave it its importance. Even when I rode my horse back in the UK, I would get dressed up for my teacher because I felt it showed respect. So I think we need a bit of that back.
I agree. I remember a great story that I heard. This was people that were doing a symposium in South Africa, and Roy Peters was there, and they had to go. I think I'm making up the cities from where they had to go, but being there, I know that you had to. Generally, you started off in one city and you went, and I think they were starting off in one city, and then they were doing another show in Johannesburg, and they had to get I think whatever it was, a 5:30 flight in the morning or whatever, and everybody came down because they knew they were going to the hotel room. They'd have to check in, they'd get changed, and then do their model calls, etc. And everybody came down. You know, they got their hat on, sweats on, ready to fall asleep on the plane. And Rita Rusk came downstairs, and she was dressed to the nines. And everybody was looking at her and said, "Why are you dressed up?" He said. She said, "Why are you dressed up? We're going on a plane and going to a hotel room." And she said, "You never know when a fan isn't watching."
Wow. How
and I went,
is that?
there you go. There you go. That's why that was another lady with great respect that I have for. Amazing stuff.
Yes, indeed.
So you mentioned horse. So horse riding as well, that you still horse ride to this day?
Yeah, I have a horse now. He's an Irish boy. His name is Celtic Cross. When I stopped dancing, I had always had a love affair with horses, and so my first horse, I think I owned her when I was about 23, and I fell in love with horses, and they've been predominantly in my life from that period on, and I always wanted to have them. And my mother was like, "Oh, no, darling, you'll get very dirty." And I kind of like that part. But yeah, I have a horse. And I think that's critically important to have interests outside of your career. And ironically, I do dressage, which is like dancing with horses. Yeah. And we can dance to music with them. And it's another discipline. And I love to be a student. And so it's grounding, it's balancing, and to just be with an animal that they have this fifth dimensional capacity. They can feel your emotion, they can feel your thought almost before you've even thought of it. Wow. So how you show up and how you let go, it taps into authenticity of this is who I am, and I think it's so important as you climb the ladder to success to keep your authenticity. Because sometimes, we'll have role models and we want to be like that role model, but then we'll only be a second-rate version of them. And I think we need mentoring, we need guiding, but at some point, and Trevor was wonderful like this, it's like, okay, it's time to fly, Viv. It's time to spread your wings. I've given you an incredible foundation. Now go and soar. And so horses are a wonderful way of just saying, okay, show it to me.
Yeah. And, what a great lesson, though, from, I love horses. I rode them when I was a kid. Nothing like what you do, but to me it was just get on and have a good time. But the reality, when you think about the metaphor that happens there between when you're teaching somebody, and that same way that horse has that connection with you, that if you can just try to connect, just even if it's nothing more than just eyesight, you'll gain more knowledge about that person that you're teaching than you probably will with a 1,000 words, just by looking at them as a person and seeing that person I think that you'll gain respect, and and there's this mutual respect, and all of a sudden barriers come down. I saw that so many times when and I've said this in a few other episodes. I'll say it again. That pardon my language, but probably when I started off teaching, I was a bit of an asshole, simply because the way that people taught was the way that I taught, and I thought that's just the way you were supposed to teach, and was being a hard nose and calling people on their stuff because that's what they did to me. And I went, oh, that's what you do. And it wasn't until I found that I could do more wrong that I could do good if I did it the other way around and stayed more positive. So I think your metaphor and your takeaways, and I see it in you all the time, because you have this connection with hair and with an audience that very few people have, because it's the ability just to give your talent away. And I see it in your work all the time, whether you're doing avant-garde or whether you're doing beautiful commercial long hair. And I want to talk a little bit more about that and your classes in just a second here. But there's so many people that push it way far to the left. And it's either looking A, too done, B, which is the other one, the thing that I hate, which I call kitchen sink, where I learn 3 things or 10 things and I try to fit it on one head of hair. And Anna, you have this unbelievable ability to make anything look absolutely beautiful, feminine, and tasteful. And those are 3 hard things to put together.
Well, Trevor taught me that more than anybody.
Yeah.
He did. I was working on a collection for him in the US, and I was really struggling because I didn't have a team around me. I was by myself and just trying so hard because I knew this collection was significant and it was going to go around the US. And so I finished the collection, so all the pieces that were there, and Trevor flew in from London and he came into the room and he was silent. And he just looked at the collection with those beautiful, piercing blue eyes. And he looked at me and he said, Vivienne, there's a fine line between creativity and bad taste. And so I immediately felt all this anxiety. And I thought, I wonder which one I have. So I said, which one am I? Like I needed to ask, right? He said, bad taste.
Oh, he did?
Oh, yeah. And he was right. He said, you tried way too hard. You didn't know when to stop. And, it really hurt when he said that, but it was so good.
Yeah.
Because it gave me a wake up that you don't fall so in love with your work. Have some objectivity. Like now when I'm working on something, I will photo journal the journey.
Yeah.
I'll take a shot, and because somewhere in there, if I'm deep in the trenches looking at construction and I'm not looking at shape, something extraordinary can be happening with the shape and I missed it because I was looking so close to my work. So now if I photojournal and I scroll back through, I go, oh, sweet, I should have stopped 3 minutes before because that was actually a stronger silhouette than where I ended up. So self-doubt can make you fiddle and fuss. Yeah. It's not good enough, makes you fiddle and fuss. You've got to know when to stop. And he was so critical of that, like, that fine line between creativity and bad taste. And you see it quite often where people are over trying. Yeah. So I think intuition is something we should listen to so much more. I think there's power in photojournaling your work, taking shots of it, looking at it through another set of eyes and seeing how that reads, and being really clear about where is it going and what should it be saying, because it tells a story. And if you were planning on it being a sort of a rock and roll vibe, and all of a sudden it's getting tighter and tighter and more polished, and she kind of departed from rock and roll and the relaxation kind of left, and all she's going off in this other direction and you don't realize it, and then somebody like an art director or someone comes in and goes, that's so not working. Loosen it up. And you think, oh yeah, 10 minutes ago it was loose and then it just got tighter. So a big part of how I help people is through that process of don't be so obsessed and narrowly focused that you miss the magic. And this week it was funny. I was watching one of the girls working with the hair. And I said, just fall in love with your mirror. And I said, I can see a difference. I can see a progress now. She's doing editorial work in New York and I'm helping her. So she started to open up and I could see her studying into the mirror. And I said, so how is that translating in the salon? She said, I still struggle to look in the mirror. I said, why? And she said, well, I'm worried that the client's going to think I don't know what I'm doing. And I said, and why else? And she said, I don't want the client to see doubt in my eyes. Well, what else? So we went down this sort of little conversation and I said to her, I relate because I do. I used to be terrified of looking in the mirror because I was scared the look in the client's eye of what the hell are you doing, Vivienne? And that would just I wouldn't be able to finish the hairstyle, right? So I used to bury my head into my work, hardly ever use the mirror. And the mirror is a tool.
Yeah.
The mirror is so important. So I had her say, I own the mirror. And so I said, say that, right? And she went, I own the mirror. I went, no, you don't own the mirror. I said, say it strong. And she went, I own the mirror. No, still not strong. Say it strong about I own the mirror. She said, I own the mirror. Yes, you do. And don't let those New York clients intimidate you. They're sitting in your chair. They chose to sit in your chair. Take command, right?
Yes. This episode is sponsored by the Salon Associate Accelerator from trainersplaybook.com. Are you struggling with the time and cost of associate training? Do you feel like your salon is running you? We'll get your associates on the floor, all with 90% less time from you, so you can get back to building your business. Get them world-class design, finishing, color, and client care skills they'll use every day for the rest of their career, while you focus on realizing your vision. Go to trainersplaybook.com and get the Salon Associate Accelerator. And now, back to the show. And Joe, I'm going to talk a little bit more about because you have helped so many people along, and I said this in the opening that we did is about that you actually started video teaching, I think before anybody that I know. I know I started in, I think it was 2012, and you started, I think, even way before that.
Yeah, it's 20 years now.
Tell me about what started it. There was some come along, everybody's doing shows, there was no COVID that happened, no need for video, but all of a sudden you went, hey, video. What was that magic spark for you? And what made you turn on a dime and start doing video and video teaching?
Well, I actually was 30 years ago. I thought I'm traveling all over the world, shows, lights, camera, action, and when the lights go down, how much of it's retained? And really, what is the difference I've really made? And how can I help people everywhere? So back then, the internet wasn't what it is. A phone certainly wasn't what it is. There was no YouTube, Facebook. There was no MySpace, if anyone's old enough to remember that. There was none of that, right? Phones were huge, they were expensive, and it was simply a phone. So I went off and I invested quite a lot of money back then in trying to create, it wasn't an iPad, but it was like a tablet, and it would have to be sold, the physical thing, and everything will be loaded into it. And so I was working on all this different technology and nothing was working because it couldn't take the capacity and so on and so forth. And I kept having this vision of an iPad, which did not exist. And then 2 years before Steve Jobs created the iPad, I was looking at all these different things and I kept thinking about this thing. So when the iPad came out, it was like, there it is. Yay. Thank you, Steve
You put
Jobs.
it out in the universe and there it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there it was. So I abandoned the idea. And then years passed by and I could see that technology was upping a bit, but still phones were a phone. They weren't taking a photograph. And so I started and it was painful to, problems streaming, all sorts of challenges. But I just thought that if I could deliver something that would help somebody from the comfort of their home or the comfort of the salon, and they could be able to watch it and replay. Because when I was with Trevor, we used to shoot a video, and it would be, either a real video tape, and then it went to like the DVDs, and it was somewhat limiting. And then I thought, well, this is the future. And one of my traits is I'm a futurist. So I'm always thinking about things which get me in a lot of trouble, because when you're so far ahead, expect to get arrows in your back, right? It's going to be a tough one. So it's been one of the most painful things in my career, and the most rewarding and the most difficult, because in the beginning, nobody was online. And then slowly, a bit more people came online. And when YouTube appeared, it was like, what? People are doing this for free? Like, I wouldn't go into a salon and cut hair every day for free. Why would I be giving away all of my knowledge for free? That doesn't make sense to me. And I was going around doing big shows and stages, so I didn't need that as a promo piece. And obviously right now, YouTube is a wonderful platform. And as long as you've got the discernment to know who to study from, because whether we know it consciously or not, human behavior is contagious.
Yeah.
And if you learn some tricks that are very strange, you learn 4 ways to cut a fringe, and it's a trick and a trick and a trick and a trick. And you look at it, I look at it and go, well, every single one of those tricks is really good, but why?
Yeah.
I could have just raised it into that, done and dusted in 2 seconds. Meanwhile, it's trick and trick, and I'm spinning my scissors and trick and trick and trick. And it's entertaining. But to someone who doesn't know, they think now they've got to do all of those tricks on a guest, which is way too much work.
Yeah.
So we have to have discernment to know entertainment, to know I'm doing this because I'm selling a widget. And not every widget out there is the best widget going. This carving comb and this and this and this, and some of them are fantastic. So you've got to look beyond the motive as to why that person's there. And there are brilliant people out there doing free content, and there's a reason why they're doing it, because they want to direct you in their funnel somewhere else. So I get that and I respect it. But it's made the consumer a much more savvy consumer. It's also taken business out of our salons to where I can now color my hair at home. I now can know how I can do a long layered haircut. It's really pretty simple to do that at home. So there's certain things where, because of that free model, we actually have lost some business to that. And we do gain business from it when it goes horribly wrong. But if we were rising at a faster rate than what we're seeing on YouTube, you've got to look at every decade has its features and its benefits, its high moments, its low moments. There's seasons in business. We've got to accept this is the season we're in right now.
Yep.
And we better be more smart and more savvy than ever before, i.e. a client now will take a selfie of herself and she knows her best angle. She knows more about her face and her face shape than most hairdressers. So what are we doing to elevate, to be ahead of the client? A client now can research what the formulation is of a product. She can then cross-research and see if there's this, that, and the other. I mean, it's just extraordinary for a savvy woman who likes to research what she can find out. Now she sits in your chair and she's armed and dangerous.
Yes, yeah.
And if you don't know, and if you can't read the emotional aspect of that woman, and you don't know how to read a face shape, and you don't pay attention to body type, and you don't pay attention to the essence of her femininity. Does she want to be soft and romantic? Does she want to be sexy? Where does she live? Does she want to be androgynous and she's the alpha female, right? So you've got to be able to read all of those things. And when you look at AI right now, where you can, put the hairstyle on your head and you can change the color of your hair, they're cute and adorable and they're fun, but they're not real.
No.
Because I'm putting on some rug on my head that's not my rug.
Yeah.
So, we've got to up our game. And with AI coming so fast, we better up our game more and more and more. And if we don't, every single hairdresser should be obsessed with learning.
Yes.
And toughen up and get hard feedback. Today we're way too polite. Oh, it was lovely. No, it's not. It's damn ugly. Oh, that was so pretty. No, it's not. It's so not. Yeah. Right? It's like, no, raise your standard. Raise your standard. At one point, average was okay.
Yeah.
Average is not okay today. Today, you better be outstanding to get a good result in business, because the competition is massive. So if there's one message I'd say to everybody, raise your standard and be beyond the consumer. Otherwise, it's like us going to a doctor knowing more about our health than the doctor.
Yeah. You said something really wise in there was about YouTube, and it is out there. But the one thing that I see all the time is you can get fact, and you can get tidbits, and you can get tricks, as you call them, but you can't ask questions.
No.
You see, and that's where I love the kind of programs that you do, where people actually come to you when they're in need, and they say, "Viv, help me. I need something." And that's when you can. To me, true learning happens when you do something and then somebody gives you feedback. And I love what you said about, Trevor said, there's a fine line between creative and, what was the word he used? Bad taste. And I was shocked because I know you. And so I know that what he said to you changed you and was part of your journey to being the tasteful person that you are today. So, and that's one thing that I find is that right now, people will just look at something and duplicate it, not understand why, and then it's just a trick that you repeated. It's not something that's in your arsenal and you truly understand. And I don't get me wrong. We all have stuff that's out there, and we give stuff away for free. But I think that, like you said, if people truly want to learn, they need to get a mentor. They need to get a coach. They need to get somebody that will help them along, answer their questions, give them advice. What's my path? What's my career path? And you do that with people. So, Viv, what if people want to go? Because you're not done yet. I wanted to do a little bit more with you here. But if people want to know, how do we get a hold of Vivienne? And if I want to get involved in your TV series, and if I want to get involved in learning from you, where do I go?
My website's viviennemakinder.com, and that's really the home base. My Instagram's the same. It's Vivienne Mackinder. So it's just my name, and it's spelled with an E-N-N-E. I'm not a Vivienne, I'm a Vivienne.
Yeah.
And
it's Mackinder, not Mackinder.
Yeah, Mackinder.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where you can find me. And it's just what you were saying there about coaching, because anyone that would be coming to you, Chris, you could look at their world and you could save them decades, because you've been through so much, you have so much experience, so much wisdom, that when they invest in you, you are taking them in the fast lane, because you can remove the obstacles and the challenges and the failures and the successes that kind of hold you back and take you forward and hold you back. So I think you're right. It's wonderful to be observant of all the different platforms out there. You just have to have discernment. Yeah. And if you waste so much time scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, you never know if you can do anything in life until you physically do it. So scrolling, you may know about it, but you don't know it until you do it. And I think that's really important. So I've taken 20 years to refine the learning process, and I've failed forward, clearly, to get to where I am now. And what's fascinating is the success I'm seeing now, I've never seen in my career. Yeah. I've never seen people so quickly be transformed, because it's a hybrid of online lessons that they learn. They then show up for the live events that we do. So we're recreating what they learned. And then in my photographic forums, they post their work. So when they put their work in the forums, I can then review their work. And then we take the next step to see how they're representing themselves in social media, so that we have it's really 4 steps. And so I want to make sure that as they're upgrading the level of their work, their signature looks and defining their style, and I want it to be their style, not my style, their style, that they can replicate when it actually goes out into the social media world. I want to make sure that their messaging is right and they're getting the clients that they want sitting in their chair. Yes. And it's hugely different when you have intentionality about who you want to serve and the type of work you want to do. And you put that out there in every shape or form, by the way you dress, by your environment, by your narrative behind your chair, to everything that goes out beyond your bricks and mortar into the social media world. It needs to be cohesive and one message. And I was working with somebody she wanted to quit the industry. She was burnt out, been in the business over 30 years. She was really not enjoying life, really. And I took her on this journey. So her work started to improve. Everything started to improve. It was just extraordinary. It's making more money. And one day I'm seeing her like I'm seeing you right now, and her salon's in the background. And I was like, that salon doesn't fit the you that you've evolved into. There's a disfit. And she had a little corner in a barber shop. And it was like, as much as your little corner in the barbershop's lovely, there's an image here that's it doesn't match the high caliber of work that you're producing now. So long story short, she ended up taking out the space. The barber's gone. She fixed up the space. It's now gorgeous. So she's brand correct. So then I went to social media. I went, oh dear. Oh no. Let's archive all of this. Let's start fresh. Let's get clear with our messaging. Let's make it as expensive as possible. She is happy. She is creative. She's making more money. She's doing work now that I would actually put in my portfolio. Yeah. But she worked hard for it. No one gave it to her. She showed up and she failed and she succeeded. And every roadblock that came her way, she took it as an opportunity to learn. And I have to say, I've learned more from my failures than I've ever learned from my successes. So I am so proud of her. I couldn't have done that if it was in the physical space, because I couldn't have met her every single week. And she's on the West Coast and I'm on the East Coast. So this has allowed me to step into people's worlds and gently, very gently, take them on a journey. 1% change, gentle. And transformation is at the end of their mindset-wise, skills, joy. I mean, I want to see people creating beauty. I hate it when a client is wearing a hairstyle that's convenient with the hairdresser's schedule or what they like wearing themselves. It really bothers me, because that client... we have such an honor to touch somebody and to go into the soul realm of design and discover who they are and who they are not. And it's not just putting a hairstyle on somebody. It's designing to face shape, to the body type, to their personality, to their lifestyle, to their age. There are so many considering factors there. It really is an emotional journey. Now, clearly, I could be like, oh, so what do you want today? A little bit of a trim, same as usual. Well, that's taking an order. That's not designing. So what I do is I take people from order takers through a really very detailed consultation. And it's in my consultation that people are making more money, which is so funny because I'm not a business person. If you showed me an Excel sheet, I'd go, I do every week when my bookkeeper shows up. But because they're authentic, because they've elevated their skills, because they're meeting the client where she lives, I'm having hairdressers say to me, I've been working with this client for 20 years. I gave her the consultation form. I had no idea what I was missing. And the clients are responding, and they're becoming raving fans. And that to me is better than winning any award when I can help somebody at that level. I mean, that's beautiful.
Yeah. You know, the insights that I'm getting with you is I'm going back to your narrative that you were talking about with your horse and connecting with the horse and how they know what you need, sometimes even before you need it. And to me, that's where I sense that you and your coaching ability, that you have this innate sense to say, this is where you need to go. Just like those reins, we need to come over here. And you're guiding those people into into the areas that they needed to, wanted to, but were always afraid to go into. And so that to me is so admirable, because that's a special quality that most people can't do. They will just give opinions rather than true coaching, and there's a huge difference. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. And it's always wonderful when you can also create content that's new. I'm about to do, which I've never done this before. I'm going to be working with this amazing photographer, and we're going to be doing this photo shoot, and we're going to be doing virtual sessions before the shoot so that everyone is prepared before they even meet us in New York.
Oh, got it.
And they're going to be part of the entire journey. And one of the days, the photographer is actually going to work with the students' phones. So he's going to coach them with their phone before we even go into the real shoot. And so I want them to start training their eye to see the magic and to know how to use their device fully. And then the next day we actually go in and we start taking the real deal photographs. but I want to take them on a journey. And I love that I know everybody before I meet them physically, because we've already met in the virtual world. And they're going to be part of the whole photographic journey, the storyboard. They're even going to be involved in the casting of the models. So they're going to really feel what it's like to produce a shoot at a really high level. So some have never ever done a photo shoot before. In fact, most of them haven't. And most of them don't really know how to take a really, really good pro photograph with their phone. So even though it's very exclusive and very tiny group, I'm going to be pushed. And already the photographer is teaching me things. And I've been around photographers my entire career. I've had some of my worst experiences in photo shoots. Worst experiences where I wanted to quit hairdressing and sobbing in the bathroom. So I clearly know that. And he says something really powerful. And he said, Viv, he said, you must always remember the client is the camera.
Yeah.
And it's only got one eye.
Yeah.
It's got one eye. And it doesn't see things the same as two eyes.
Yeah.
That's why it doesn't see depth. Yeah. And that's why so many hairstyles don't work photographically, because they're looking so much with their naked eye. They haven't understood how the camera is really reading that. And it's a trained eye to do that. But again, there are no shortcuts to this. People are going to have to practice it. And they say, oh, well, I don't have time. My clients, da, da, da. It's like, well, then at least get your client to do a selfie, right? At least try something. Can you not stay back one night to book your best client at the end of the day, bring in a makeup artist, and see what leverage you can get from that one shot that you've taken the time? Don't expect it to happen without putting the work in. I mean, it's like, hello, work. You've got to work, right? You've got to get into you've got to put your work overalls on. There's no shortcut to that. And I think, unfortunately, today people see the end result. They don't see the hard work that took place behind that.
And I think they can jump into that. That's Viv. I've got this section is it's all rapid fire, So I'm just asking you questions and it's just I'll throw some questions at you. First thing that comes to your mind, 1 word, 2 words, whatever, and just whatever comes to the top of your brain. Okay, so what turns you on in the creative process?
Originality.
And what stifles it?
Nothing.
An event or show that you've loved, one that you've done that comes to your brain where this is the one went, wow, if I would ever went out, that would have been the one.
I think I did a show within the grounds of the Vatican in Italy, and the stage was where they actually had the symphony. And it was huge. We timed it. It took 30 seconds to walk from the side, the wings, to the center of the stage. And I was representing the United States, and I was the first female fashion director for Intercoiffure, which clearly was known as the Boys Club. So I walk out on that stage to, I don't know, maybe about 4,000 people. And it was such a spectacular space. And I just stood there all alone on that stage, and I did my presentation. And before me and after me were these huge teams with all this theater and drama, and predominantly men, which is fine. Yeah. And as I stepped out there, I thought, wow, this is kind of cool. And I felt so tiny on that stage, but it was a beautiful show. I mean, it was magnificent. And I felt very honored to have represented the United States. And
I'll tell you that I wish I would have been there, because that would have blown me away, especially with your work. The thing in life that you dislike the most?
I think when anyone does things with disrespect.
And what do you love the most?
Anything done in love.
Most difficult time in your life?
Building my website.
Thing that you hate most, let me rephrase that. Thing you dislike the most about our industry?
Ego and the unwillingness to learn.
Which living person do you admire the most?
Oh, my living person. Oh, gosh. Wow, that's a tough one. Living person. I would say my husband.
A person you wish you could meet.
Do they have to be alive?
Anybody.
I'd like to meet Jesus. I think that would be pretty cool.
That'd be pretty cool. Especially if you're running short of wine. So, something that people don't know about you.
That I am actually quite a shy person.
Oh, interesting. A month off. You just give it to you. Where would you go? What would you do?
Oh gosh, God, that's tough. Is it a month with my horse, or is it going
Anything
to Bali?
you want. Anything you want.
I think I'd probably go off somewhere exotic like Bali.
What would you do there?
Relax and have tons of spa treatments. Actually, I'll probably be bored after a week, but it sounds like a really lovely idea.
What's your greatest fear?
I'm not a fan of heights.
Oh, me either. Favorite curse word?
I don't really have one, actually. I couldn't say that it's favorite. I mean, just recently I just did a course, and the word bullshit was used a lot when they were saying why people make excuses and lack of time, lack of this, and the word bullshit came out a lot. I thought, yeah, that's pretty true, but I wouldn't really say that. I know I just said it twice.
Yeah.
But
Bull Durham.
I don't really have one. No.
Favorite comfort food?
Oh gosh, I've just given it up.
Oh.
I would say, yes.
I'm dying to know now.
Yeah, well, I love just so simple. Just some French bread, some lovely cheese, and a nice glass of red wine. And yeah, it's all going.
Well, no, you can't leave us hanging. Why is it all going?
Tomorrow I have an appointment with a surgeon, and I have a hole in my heart. So I've got to be a good girl.
Oh. Well, we're going to say a few good words at bedtime tonight for you. If you could change one thing about yourself, what would it be?
Oh, gosh. I don't know. What would it be? Oh, what would it be? I don't know. Taller, thinner, prettier? I don't know. What would it be? More energy? No, I've got good energy. I don't know. What would it be? Swimsuit model figure? What would it be?
I'll give you one. No hole in your heart.
Yeah, really. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
What's your most treasured possession?
Treasured possession. Oh gosh, treasured possession. I do love my home. Actually, it's lovely. That is a possession, isn't it? I can't call my husband a possession. I don't own him. My horse.
Yeah.
I love my horse.
Something in the industry that you haven't done, but you'd want to?
I don't think there's anything. Actually. I think I've done it all.
Tomorrow, you couldn't do hair. What would you do?
Probably working with horses. Yeah, probably horses.
Nice. Okay, last thing. If you had one wish for our industry, what would it be?
Become lifelong learners and take it seriously. Don't go to this as a job. It's a hard one to have as a job. But if you view it as a career, it has endless possibilities. And be willing to fail forward. Be willing to make mistakes and learn from the greatest of the greatest. Raise your standards.
Bingo. Vivienne, it has been a true honor. One day, I'll sit and drink a glass of wine and watch you ride your horse.
You owe me a big hug.
Yes, and it will be that. So, Vivienne, you for giving up your time and just
thank you.
being so straightforward with all the people here. And I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart to yours. I just want to say thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.